Cleveland and Kansas City. Like I said, I'm still kind of waiting on the Chiefs this year to see how it goes, but I think they're better than the Browns. They have more talent, so they're going to win this game. Chicago at Dallas. I really do hate on the Cowboys and think they're overrated and all those types of things. But when I say they're overrated, I still think that they're a 9-7, 10-6 type team. And I think they beat the Bears at home because the Bears suck and the Cowboys are at home. So Cowboys win this game. Philly at Detroit, easiest pick of the week. For those of you that tuned in for my rant on Monday about Michael Vick, I mean, how's Detroit going to stop them if the Packers don't? I got Michael Vick and Philly rolling in this one. I don't know how the Lions are going to stop him. I don't know how they're going to score points. Stafford's out. I think it's a pretty easy win for Philly in this one. All right, Buffalo at Green Bay. First, I'll just go ahead and say Packers by a lot. They're going to easily win this game. Also want to, shout out to a little bit of the Packer fans there, letting you guys know that you shouldn't be too concerned about Ryan Grant being out for the season. Ryan Grant wouldn't start for most NFL teams out there. He's not that good. He can run for 7 yards up the middle, follows blockers, whatever. Brandon Jackson will do just fine in return for him. If I were the GM of the Packers, I would do things a little bit differently. I respect Ted Thompson for what he does, trying to play from within, draft his players, stuff like that. I think he could easily go out there, shoot out a third or fourth round pick, and pick up maybe one of the running backs from the Cowboys. Julius Jones. They're high in for set out in Seattle. Maybe they could pick up Julius Jones. I think there's a lot of guys out there that you could go after. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to give Brandon Jackson the ball. And I think that's fine. I mean, this team is not about running the football. It's about Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball down the field to all those wide receivers they have. And I think they're going to do that a lot, and Buffalo is pretty screwed in that game. So Tampa Bay at Carolina. Both these teams are mediocre. Really not going to do much this year. I'm going to take Freeman and the Bucks. Just because I'm a little biased. I think Josh Freeman's going to be a good quarterback, and I don't think Carolina has anything to do. And neither one of these teams is really good, so don't get too excited. But yeah, Bucks in this one. Seattle at Denver. I don't know. I thought the Seahawks weren't any good. I know the Broncos aren't any good. But it's tough to say who's worth. The Seahawks won last week. I think having Hasselbeck's experience maybe gives them a slight edge. God knows Orton's terrible. I just really don't like picking either one of these teams, but you got Broncos at home. All right, St. Louis at Oakland. Wow. They shouldn't really let these two teams play each other. It just gives one of them a win that really isn't a win. It's just kind of like, oh, you're not the worst team in the league. So I'm going to go out and pick the Rams in this one. Good chance for Bradford to get his first win in his NFL career. I think there's more to come from Bradford, but they're just not good right now. Houston at Washington. Texans coming off the big win against the Colts. Skins probably feeling pretty good about themselves winning that game on Sunday night. I got the Texans simply because they're better. They know how to score points. McNabb, he gets his first touchdown this game, but they aren't going to score many points. That team is a fossil collection. We'll go into that one probably next week or something. Texans. Jags at San Diego. Jags suck. Chargers get their first win at home. They usually struggle early, but they're going to win this one. All right. So now I want to break down the last few games in a little bit more detail. I didn't really have a chance. I need to say some things about these teams going forward and how this plays out in the whole landscape of the NFL this next season. So I'm going to start with the Vikings. Didn't get a chance to talk about them on Monday. I didn't touch on that first game of the season. There was so much going on over the weekend that I just kind of let this one go. So, this week they got the Dolphins at home. I think they win this game. But in order for this team to compete in the NFC this year and a chance to go to the Super Bowl, they need Brett Favre to play better. He just looked like he didn't understand the offense last week. They started the game with conservative runs, and he never really looked sharp. It kind of looked like Childress didn't even really trust him with the play calling. He made that pick where he just kind of threw it in no one's business throwing just when he's on the ground almost. But, that's Brett. That's not the issue. He's going to do that again. His redeeming grace has always been the big throws down the field. He hit Shanko, who, by the way, is a beast, down the middle a few times in that game. But he needs to be more consistent and spread the ball out on offense. He really needs to understand what's going on. It's like, that's what happens when you skip training camp. So I think this is something that time will heal, but it needs to happen real soon. Next week the Vikings got the Lions, then they got the bye, and then they are at the Jets. Now, all right, so I said the way to beat the Jets is to spread them out. So AP is not going to be able to beat the Jets. The Jets have a better defense than the Vikings overall. Their corners give them the edge. I think the front seven of the Vikings is a little bit better, especially now that Jenkins is out. So AP is not going to be able to beat them. We need Brett Favre to be able to spread them out, throw the ball, to be able to do that. And we haven't seen that yet. And so he needs to kind of heat up here over these next couple weeks to get rolling coming into the Jets to win that game. So, and then they got the Packers twice. If Brett Favre's not playing well, they're going to lose those games. At New England, they'll lose that if he plays like he did against New Orleans. At Philly, they'll probably lose that game too. And Dallas. Those are games that are going to be really tough if Brett isn't playing as well. It puts too much pressure on Adrian Peterson. And like I said, they're going to win at home this week against the Dolphins. But, we need to see more in order to, get high on the Vikings. So, okay, next we got the Jets in New England. I've already said enough about the Jets, but I think the Patriots do just what I said needs to happen to beat the Jets. They spread them out and throw the ball. Here's the thing on the Patriots. They are still the team to beat in the AFC and the NFL. They lost the Super Bowl back in Giants, after their perfect season. Then they choked. Giants played a good game. That happens. Then Tom Brady goes down week 1 in 2008, and they still go 11-5, but they don't make the playoffs because it was a weird year in the NFL, and 11-5 tiebreaker didn't make it. Last year they struggle on defense, and they put their offense in some difficult situations, but they still win the division. They still make the playoffs, and if Wes Welker doesn't go down late in the season, I think they beat the Ravens in that first round of playoff games. Then they would have got the Colts in the second round, and who knows what would have happened, especially after that regular season game with the Colts last year. Wes Welker and Randy Moss together make them a tough team to play defense against. Their defense really played well against the Bengals last week. The score really didn't reflect it. They were up 31-3 before the Bengals got some garbage touchdowns. So to me, my point is nothing has changed, and the Patriots are still one, if not the best, one of the best teams in the league, up there with the Saints. And Belichick is still the coach. They weren't as good last year because their defense, like I said, because so anyone that says, well, what about the Saints killed them last year? Yeah, I know. Their defense was bad. They were playing in New Orleans. Okay. This team is good. They're going to beat the Jets this week. And I think they're a force in the AFC. So, lastly, we got the Super Bowl champs. The Saints won in week 1 that surprisingly low-scoring game against the Vikings. Those of you that are concerned about the Saints' offense, I really wouldn't be. It was early in the season. Everybody's all jacked up. It's kind of a slow start. Thursday night game. The Vikings' defense is good. We all kind of probably expect that game to be in the 20s and 30s, and there's no reason not to think that. But I think they still are the champs. They still got Drew Brees and all those receivers. If the Vikings would have put up more points, I think the Saints would have matched them by putting up more points. It kind of came into a conservative game. They're fine. This week they got the 49ers in San Francisco on Monday night. I think they win that game, and if you got Drew Brees as your fantasy quarterback, I think he's going to do just fine for you. The road to the Super Bowl, the NFC still goes through New Orleans, and I think we're going to start seeing that as the weeks go on. You're going to see them keep winning and start winning games more handily too. All right, so that's all for this week's edition of Wien World of Sports. Thank you all for tuning in once again, and we will see you next week to go over how the weekend ended up. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to be doing this weekend. I don't know. Weather might be rough, but, I'm sure I'll be doing something cool. So, much love to you all, and have a wonderful day.